Hey everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on narcissism and narcissistic relationships and healing from these relationships. Have you ever been caught in a narcissistic gotcha? Let's talk about that. So, the gotcha, right? So many things contribute to the hypervigilance of the narcissistic relationship. These are unpredictable relationships with unpredictable people who have unpredictable, yet incredibly predictable in some ways, personalities. But one of the things that comes up and can push this hypervigilance is the so-called gotcha of the narcissistic relationship. It's a power play, straight up. The narcissistic person waits for you to make the tiniest mistake or misstep or misspeak, and bam, they are on you. You don't choose exactly the right word. You don't remember the exact right date of something, and the gotcha hits you when you actually do get something wrong, because we're human beings and we get stuff wrong. But they don't just stop if you say, oh shoot, you're right, I did get that date wrong. It is next Wednesday. They won't let it go. They may even rub your face in it. See, little Miss Perfect, isn't that smart? It is such a gross experience that it can make any error that you make, no matter how small it is, such an atrocious experience in one of these relationships. Narcissistic people are what we can call toxic correctors. For example, they will contemptuously and snobbily deride your pronunciation of something. They'll say, it's Hermes, not Hermes. It's Houston Street, not Houston Street. And this sort of eye-rolling way. A little bit of Dr. Ramani history. I remember I was younger, and I was very young, and I was on a date, and I didn't know how to pronounce challah, like the bread, right? And I ordered the French toast made with challah bread, and I said challah. And the date laughed and laughed at me and rolled his eyes. I remember feeling so ashamed and so stupid, and he never called again. I didn't know him well enough to know if he was narcissistic, but I think I have to count my blessings that I didn't have to find out. I think to this day, when I see a loaf of challah bread, I have a little bit of like a shame. But narcissistic people will correct you about anything, from the name of hotel to a historical fact. But this isn't the same as the gotcha. The gotcha that the narcissistic people love, it feels more revengey, like they want to punish you, make you look bad, make themselves look good. It's a power play. I know something and you don't. And the gotcha is typically shaming. It's not as simple as, oh, you got it wrong. You said we only needed 8 burgers and we actually needed 9. You were so confident, weren't you? The narcissistic gotcha in the workplace can be that colleague that really doesn't do anything. So you may just be the one who gets everything done, but they're the first to say, well, look at this mistake you made. Basically, they don't do anything but notice all the mistakes that everyone else makes. The narcissistic gotcha isn't just the catching of our mistakes. It's the enjoying in a way that it has somehow brought us down a notch, especially if we're people who take some pride or are quite organized about something. For example, you may be the one who always tries to remember everything in a diaper bag for a baby or does the grocery shopping. And so the one time you forget the extra diapers or the butter when you go to the store, they will be the first to say, oh, it looks like the organized mommy couldn't even remember the diapers. How organized really are you? It speaks to the constant double bind of these relationships. You often take up more and more and more of the slack because asking them to do something is such a nightmare. And then when you miss one thing, bam, there they are, to catch it and then shame you about it. Narcissistic people are not team players. They tend to be malcontents. They feel as though they're entitled to do less than everyone else because, well, they're special and they're just them. But they are very quick to point out tiny little foibles in the workplace, but they will never take responsibility for doing the tasks or the things in the first place. They revel in the mistake finding and in the shaming. Over time, the hypervigilance and the sense that making a mistake, even a small mistake, can feel almost catastrophic in a narcissistic relationship can really be one more thing that makes these relationships feel horrifying and exhausting. The worst is when you see narcissistic parents doing this to their children, especially when the child is trying to learn something. And the parent is so quick with the gotcha. The kid gets 10 things right, but the one thing wrong, it's as though there's almost a sort of narcissistic parental glee in pointing it out. It allows the parent to remain in the dominant position, which they're already in because they're the adult, but it leaves the child feeling as though they are never enough. Listen, we're human beings. We all make mistakes. We make mistakes and narcissistic mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes. And in some cases, especially in workplaces, they do need to be pointed out. But there's a difference between pointing out a mistake and a gotcha. Pointing out a mistake can be done respectfully and in an optimal world only when necessary to protect the other person or to get something done correctly and not to punish them. A healthy version of pointing out a mistake may be, hey, that appointment is actually next Tuesday, not next Wednesday. I wouldn't want you to miss it, so be sure to update the calendar, rather than, oh, look at you, little misorganized, you harp on everyone else, but you're the one who got the day wrong, blah, blah, blah. There's a difference. Narcissistic relationships are not something what we call fault tolerant. They're not fault tolerant, meaning that in a narcissistic relationship, you could get 100 things right. And when you get that one thing incorrect, they will be all over it. Of course, if we were to point the narcissistic person's errors out to them, it's a gaslighting waterfall at that point. And because the vigilance we may practice of not wanting to get it wrong, we get it right a lot in these relationships. But nobody can get it right every time. And since quite often they do expect us to read their minds, getting it right is a bit of a miracle at times. But the gotcha is more often around us missing a detail, a fact, or it's even a cruel jab at something we don't know. And in this way, narcissistic relationships can sap our courage. We often end up a lot more inhibited in a variety of situations, fearful of saying things out of fear, not just of getting it wrong, but getting caught in that perpetual shaming, humiliating gotcha that is the narcissistic relationship. The gotcha is often why narcissistic folks are not good team players. They are more focused on pointing out what people are doing wrong than they are in working collaboratively on solutions. Remember, pointing out your error, especially in a contemptuous manner, has nothing to do with solutions. It has to do with shaming you so they can keep their power. Now, another twist in the gotcha is when they do it when perhaps you do get through to them a tiny little bit. So, and they ask, and then they do. Let's say they do the thing you ask them to do. For example, maybe you ask them to please remember to put the milk away when they're done with it. Basic stuff. And they ask you to notice when they finally remember to put the milk away. So the first time they get that very fundamental milk thing right, and you don't notice it right away, it's bam, see? They'll say, I did it right. I put the milk away and you didn't even notice. This gotcha-ing can also happen around other kinds of communication. For example, you are frustrated that they are often quite inconsistent in responding to text messages about important issues. Then after that, a day comes when they text you about something and you can't respond right away because you're driving or do something. And they say, see, I'm not the only one who doesn't drop what they're doing and responding. Over time, This kind of gotcha pattern can lead you to stop asking for any fixes because it always comes back to bite you. Again, one more fallout of the gotcha. If you do keep getting caught in these humiliating gotchas with a narcissistic person, always remember, it's them. It's not you. Sometimes I can't help it. Keep finding those places in your life to be courageous. And when the gotcha happens, at least you know there's a name for it. Thanks again.